Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're taking a plunge into some really fascinating ancient Buddhist texts. We've got excerpts here from the Dhammapada commentary, specifically stories around verses 177 and 291.
Right, and they both involve the esteemed disciple Mahāmoggallāna.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And our mission really for this deep dive is to kind of zero in on the core teachings and maybe find some, surprising insights from these stories.
Yeah.
All seen through Mahāmoggallāna's own questions and experiences. Let's see what these sources actually tell us.
Well, what's so compelling, I think, about these particular stories is how they sort of bridge different levels of understanding on the Buddhist path.
Okay, how so?
They show us the surprising power of what seem like really small actions.
Right.
But they also point towards that much deeper internal work that leads to, ultimate freedom, nibbana.
And Mahāmoggallāna, he's kind of the perfect guide for this, isn't he? With his abilities to explore both realms.
Absolutely. He really connects the dots for us.
Okay, so the first story then. This one's linked to verse 177, and it kicks off with something pretty extraordinary. Mahāmoggallāna goes on, well, the text calls it a divakarika, like a celestial journey.
Right. He's visiting the heavenly realms, the deva worlds, exploring these divine planes, sort of getting a firsthand look at the results of different actions.
And up there, he meets these female deities, Devakabita, living just incredible splendor, these beautiful mansions, vimanas.
Right.
So naturally, he asked them the obvious question, how did you get here? How did you attain such mahati sampati, such great prosperity?
And this is where it gets really interesting. Their first reaction, it's not what you'd expect.
Oh.
The text says they actually felt ashamed of their small deeds.
Ashamed. That seems counterintuitive.
Right.
Why would they be ashamed of the very things that got them into heaven?
Well, it might speak to the Buddhist view that, heavenly rebirths are great, but they're still temporary. They're based on merit, but not the final goal. So maybe they felt their actions were, insignificant compared to the reward, or they kind of understood these were just nice stopovers, not the destination.
I see. But Mahāmoggallāna encourages them to talk anyway, right?
He does. He wants to know. And the stories they tell are, they're astonishingly simple.
Like what?
Okay, so one deity, she basically explained she hadn't done any big religious things, no major donations, no complex worship, didn't even really sit and listen to lots of Dharma talks.
Really? So what did she do?
Her main practice was just holding on to truthfulness. The text says, Sakamata Arakata, she simply guarded the truth. Consistently.
Well, just speaking truthfully, that's it.
Apparently so. Enough for that rebirth. Then there's this other account, really moving, from a deity who'd been a slave in her previous life.
Okay.
Her master was incredibly violent, apparently hit her constantly, and she'd feel anger rising up, naturally. Who wouldn't? But she developed this practice of talking to herself, reminding herself, he has the power to hurt me more, even disfigure me. And she actively resolved not to give in to the anger.
So she didn't suppress the feeling necessarily, but the angry reaction.
Exactly. She worked with it. Her prosperity, the text says, came from abandoning that active anger.
That's incredible resilience, especially in such a horrific situation.
It's a powerful example, isn't it? Inner work, having these tangible results, even from a place of real hardship.
And the others, were their stories similar?
The others all talked about giving gifts, but incredibly small gifts, to a virtuous monk.
How small are we talking?
Like really small. The text lists them.
Yeah.
One single stalk of sugarcane.
Just one.
Yeah. Or one timburasaka fruit, one eluca fruit, like a cucumber or gourd, one furusaka fruit, maybe like lychee, a single small bundle of radishes, a single bundle of neem leaves.
Okay, so we're talking minimal offerings here.
Exactly. The emphasis is on the smallness. And they all attributed their heavenly rebirth to these seemingly tiny acts of giving, or like the others, just truthfulness or managing anger.
So Mahāmoggallāna hears all this, comes back down, and he's clearly struck by it all.
Understandably.
He goes straight to the Buddha and asks almost, incredulously, is it really possible? Can you get this divine prosperity just from speaking truth or abandoning anger?
Right.
Or giving these tiny little gifts?
Yeah, he seems genuinely surprised, maybe even a bit doubtful, even though he heard it directly from the deities themselves.
His surprise is important, isn't it? It kind of validates how surprising this teaching is for us, too.
Exactly. It feels disproportionate, maybe. But the Buddha confirms it. He says, yes, it is possible. Simply by upholding truth, abandoning anger, or giving even a small gift, one can go to the Diva world.
And this leads directly to the Buddha stating verse 177.
That's right. The verse sums it up. Speak the truth, should not be angry, should give even a little when asked.
Thikabam, nakucheya, tajawa paspitiasito.
And the commentary adds a bit more flavor. Sakata bin isn't just, not lying. It's really dwelling in truthfulness.
Okay.
Nakujaya is specifically about not letting anger master you, especially towards others. And daja apapiasito, that giving part, it clarifies it's about giving to virtuous mendicants who are asking.
And it says even them just standing at your door counts as asking, right?
Right. And you should give even a tiny amount if you have something to give and the person is worthy.
But here's the kicker. The text highlights this. Etehitid hiheni.
Yes.
By even one of these three things. Not necessarily all three together. Just one is enough.
Just one. That's a really powerful message, I think. It makes generating positive karma and aiming for a good rebirth feel much more accessible. These are fundamental virtues.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the first story, focused on actions and heavenly results. Let's shift gears now.
Okay.
The second story is related to verse 291. The source mentions it's similar in context, Mahāmoggallāna, the Buddha, Jetavana monastery, but the focus is totally different.
Completely different. Instead of Moggallāna exploring the heavens and asking about others' deeds,
Yeah.
this story is about Moggallāna Thera himself, about his own state of being.
Oh, okay. What aspect?
The text specifically highlights his freedom from craving, his nitanthavava.
Freedom from craving. So the Buddha speaks, verse 291, about that state, Moggallāna's state.
Exactly. And in doing so, the verse gives the Buddha's definition of who is a true Brahmin, not by birth, but by spiritual attainment.
Okay, let's hear the verse.
Yasalayana vijanti, anyaya katakati, amatokade anupata, tamaha brumi brahmananti.
Right, let's break that down a bit. Yasalayana vijanti.
He whose attachments or alaya do not exist.
Yeah.
And the text explicitly says alaya here means tana, craving.
So, first component, no craving. Got it. What's next?
Anyaya akakatati. This translates roughly to, having understood as they truly are, he is free from doubt.
Understood what?
The commentary mentions the 8 bases of a kuni, but doesn't detail them. The key point isn't what specifically, but that through direct, true understanding, anyaya, this person has become akathakati, literally not saying how, why, meaning free from doubt, nibichikicho.
So it's a deep, direct knowledge that eliminates fundamental uncertainty about reality, not just intellectual.
Precisely. It's realized understanding, no more questions about the fundamental nature of things.
And the last part, abato gator anupata.
He has plunged into the deathless amata, having reached it step by step. And the deathless here is nibbana.
Nibbana. Reached it, plunged into it, and that person.
Tamaha brumi brahman santi. That's the one the Buddha says I call a Brahman.
It's purely about the inner state then. Freedom from craving, freedom from doubt through insight, and attaining nibbana. Nothing external.
Exactly. Nothing about rituals or birth or social status. It's all internal realization.
Okay, so putting these two stories and verses side by side, it paints a really clear picture, doesn't it?
It really does. A powerful contrast.
The first story, verse 177, that's all about actions. Simple, virtuous actions.
Right. Truthfulness, not getting angry, small acts of giving.
And the results are good, desirable rebirth in heaven, but, as you said, temporary. Still within the cycle.
It shows the amazing effectiveness of basic goodness, even tiny bits of it, for improving your situation within samsara, the cycle of rebirth.
But then the second story, verse 291, that points somewhere else entirely.
Totally different destination. It's not about actions for temporary rewards. It's about an internal state.
The absence of craving, the clarity that removes doubt.
Leading to nibbana, ultimate, irreversible freedom from the cycle.
And Mahāmoggallāna connects them both. He's the one exploring the heavens, seeing the results of those simple deeds, and he himself embodies that ultimate attainment, that freedom from craving that defines the true Brahmin. He shows us the whole spectrum.
He really does. And for you listening, I think these stories offer such practical insights, even though they're ancient.
Yeah, how so?
Well, first, your everyday simple acts of virtue, choosing truth, managing irritation, sharing a little something, they do matter. They have real consequences, shaping your future. Don't underestimate them.
Right. Don't feel like it has to be some huge sacrifice to make a difference.
Exactly. But second, they also show that the deepest peace, that ultimate liberation, that doesn't come from just accumulating merit for better circumstances. It comes from the really profound inner work.
Letting go of attachment, letting go of craving, developing that deep understanding that cuts through doubt.
That's the path to Nibbana.
So it's not really an either situation, is it? Good actions are valuable, they create better conditions.
Definitely valuable.
But there's this higher goal, this path of inner liberation that Moggallāna himself reached. It shows these different levels of cause and effect working.
Which kind of raises a fascinating question for reflection, doesn't it? How do you personally weigh the value of cultivating positive experiences in the world through virtue?
Like aiming for those heavenly realms.
Versus the path of seeking liberation from the world altogether through that inner transformation.
That's a deep one. So just to wrap up our deep dive today, we've journeyed with Mahāmoggallāna Thera. We saw how surprisingly powerful, simple acts like truth, not getting angry, and tiny gifts can be, potentially leading to favorable rebirths, like in the heavens, as verse 177 outlines.
Small causes, significant temporary effects within the cycle.
Right. And then we saw through Moggallāna's own state in verse 291 that the ultimate goal, the mark of a true Brahmana, isn't about external actions at all. It's that profound inner shift, letting go of craving, gaining doubt-free understanding, realizing Nibbana.
Yeah, it's a powerful contrast. Small goodness has real results in this life and the next within the cycle. But ultimate freedom, that's entirely internal, purifying the mind.
And that leaves us, and you listening, with maybe this thought to ponder. Consider that contrast, striving for those temporary, the pleasant rewards through external actions, versus aiming for that ultimate, lasting internal liberation the Buddha described.
Which path resonates more deeply with you right now?
And maybe, how do those everyday virtues, choosing truth when it's hard, consciously letting go of anger when it flares up, sharing something small, how do they fit into your understanding of what makes life meaningful? Something to think about.